I think sometimes the people, maybe the researchers or the people that aren't going through it, they don't really know what people actually experience. So I think it's important to discuss things with people that have gone through the experience. Sometimes it's easier to do something because it makes sense, but doesn't make sense for the patient.
The healthcare industry at large really looks at things from the negative instead of the positives. We have a tendency to report what went wrong. I've always been a proponent for trying to figure out what's working in the system, what's right about healthcare today that we should be talking about, that we should be shining a light on. I feel like if we can get past hyper-focusing on the negatives and be more proactive about shining a light on what's working, we've got an opportunity to really start to move forward collectively as an industry, not just in clinical trials, but just healthcare overall.
Everyone at one point or another is going to be a patient or know a patient directly. And if you think about it when you're a scientist, that I'm looking to affect a positive change for a patient, and that patient might be me or my loved one, I think that can go a long way.
I think just being mindful of all the emotions that you're feeling when you're going through treatment, and pumping yourself with chemicals, as I did every 3 weeks. It's hard, it's taxing on the body. I want them to understand that I have more needs than just getting medicine. I think that there's just the emotional component and being mindful of this, being sensitive to the emotions that I'm going through.
We did everything we thought we can do. We learned a whole lot about it, but when we got back to New York, this thing with triple negative is so aggressive that it's a freight train. There's not a good way to cure this. And my prayer is for all the women that are facing triple negative breast cancer, that they find a way, that the doctors find a way to handle this. This has to be a top priority. This is like the one you have to fight. You have to beat this.
I think, where I was, I think they had a very good idea of what I was going through, and the amazing thing with breast cancer is and unfortunate is that so many women have it. So when you walk into a hospital setting like that, not only do they understand what you're up against, even my chemo nurse was a child cancer survivor, which I thought was amazing. She decided to become a nurse after, having had cancer herself in high school.
And I think that there are, healthcare professionals that have amazing patient care, bedside manner. It comes naturally to some and not to others. And I think if you always think about, if that was me in that situation, if they were to put themselves in the perspective of the patient, what would they think? What if that was me? What would I want to happen? What would I want to know? Or how would I feel if that was me? Then I think that would be a really good first step.
The patient's actually going through experiences with rare diseases or treatments that are not used often. They need to be able to see clinical outcomes in a broader sense, in a research sense that's beyond just what they're experiencing. Because it's a very narrow lens when you're just thinking about your own experience. You're thinking on a day-to-day basis, like, am I feeling good enough to get out of bed today?
The fact that we reached out for a second opinion to another organization was not necessarily very well received by his oncologist. It was not meant as a personal slight, a professional slight. It's all about staying focused on getting the best set of information, data, and options available for the patient. I was laser focused on providing him with all his options so that he could make his decisions. And it would be good for the oncologist in this situation to have understood that.
Healthcare in the United States can be fragmented with many of the specialists. Of course, you as a parent are the project managers for your child, but you're not into the medical field. So I would look up to them for that prescription, for that recommendation, for that suggestion to go for spine MRI. We had to wait 2.5 years to get that spine MRI done.
But I think it's really important from a patient perspective that you keep looking, because you might find something that you didn't know about before, and new symptoms emerge over time, and new things come up, new treatments show up, new research shows up, And if you're not looking at it with fresh eyes, then you're not going to find anything. But when you sort of off-road somebody, you've got to your diagnosis, you're all set now. You sort of stop looking in some ways for what the difference would be, and what would move the needle in that person's life.
I want them to know that patients rely on their knowledge, right? Not only do they rely on their knowledge, but they're looking to them for guidance and technology. Years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, the technology was not the same. It's ever changing. And the patients rely on them to be up to date, up to speed, to know every aspect. We also want these entities to know as well that we want to be a part of studies, but we have to trust you, right? So trust is a huge factor.